In the midsummer, Emerald Town was covered in undulating greenery. There were small bridges over flowing brooks, and the air was filled with the chirping of cicadas and the fragrance of flowers deep in the mountains. The sounds of birdsong filled the air. The air carried the dampness of the just cleared up rain, making it the perfect time to go up the mountain to pick mushrooms. The midsummer sun shone through the gaps in the leaves above, casting beams of light that landed on the straw hat on Emily's lap, creating a patchwork of bright colors like a watercolor painting. Back in the day, Grandma, with a bamboo basket hanging from her waist, sat under a large pine tree and told the strange tales that had been passed down in Emerald Town for hundreds of years. Old folks used to say that there were monsters in these mountains. They'd show up on foggy days after rain or on full moon nights, wearing masks. If a girl got lost in the mountains and saw a monster's face, it would carry her off to be its bride, and she'd never come back. Emily said helplessly, "Grandma, I'm in college now. You're still making up these spooky stories to fool me." "Yes, you're already 20. Emily, the last time you came to visit me was when you were in high school," the old woman said with a sigh. She picked up the damp towel around her neck, wiped the sweat off, and asked hopefully, "You'll stay for a while longer this time, right?" Ding dong. The text message alert sounded. Emily swiped open the screen and saw that it was from her roommate Olivia. "Chloe is being a total jerk again. She's spreading rumors on the school forum, saying you're the other woman who seduced her ex-boyfriend. She even printed your phone number on prostitution soliciting flyers and spread them everywhere. I've reported it to the counselor. Emily, hiding in the countryside isn't a solution. Call the police. Chloe has gone crazy." "Sure, Grandma. I'll leave after the new semester starts." Emily calmly turned off her phone, patted the dust off her clothes, looked around, and then pointed to the mist-covered forest ahead. "I'm going to pick mushrooms over there." Grandma didn't suspect anything and reminded her, "Don't go too far. Emily, be careful." The forest was like an endless maze. The ancient trees reached up to the sky, blocking out the sun and shielding away all the restlessness and noise. Milky white mist curled around the moss-covered, withered tree roots. Vaguely, 2 or 3 semi-transparent little mushrooms could be seen tremblingly poking their heads out. Emily had never seen such round, semi-transparent fungi before. Curious, she couldn't help but walk forward quickly. She picked up a small twig and poked at them with a soft pop. The transparent little mushrooms burrowed into the moss and disappeared, then popped up again a few meters ahead. Emily was stunned. She blinked, then blinked again. Suspecting she was hallucinating, she stubbornly continued forward. The mushrooms, frightened, disappeared into the soil again, then emerged trembling from behind a rock ahead, huddled together like sparrows, sizing up the unexpected guest. "They can move. This is amazing." Emily was so focused on following these strange little creatures that she didn't notice the fog getting thicker and the mountain path getting farther and farther away from her. A cool breeze blew. Sensing danger, the mushrooms rushed to hide in the cracks of the rocks and disappeared completely. Emily came to her senses and could only hear the strange chirping of birds. She couldn't tell which way was back, and the forest became quiet and eerie. She tried to retrace her steps. She vaguely heard the sound of water in the distance and followed it, pushing aside the bushes. She found a clear-bottomed stream. Emily put down her basket and couldn't wait to scoop up some cool, clear water and splash it on her face to drive away the heat. Rubbing her flushed arms, she saw her reflection in the shimmering waves. She was fair-skinned and delicate-featured, with a curvy figure and long legs. Her big, obsidian-like eyes were incredibly charming. As her friends would say, she had a face that could charm anyone. 3 months ago, the handsome campus hunk cornered her in front of the library, holding a bouquet of roses, and confessed his love to her in public. Unfortunately, this campus hunk had been the boyfriend of the wealthy girl Chloe just 3 days before. Even more unfortunately, Chloe was Emily's roommate. Chloe put all the blame on Emily, firmly believing that she was the other woman who had seduced her boyfriend. She spared no effort in launching a crazy revenge against Emily with the worst malice. In less than a month, rumors about Emily being a serial dater and kept woman spread all over the campus. One day, her phone started receiving messages from strange numbers out of the blue. Without exception, they were all vulgar sentences like, "I heard I can sleep with you for money. Is it true? How much for a night? And, are you good in bed? As Emily deleted those messages one by one, she felt cold all over, and her hands were shaking so much that she could barely tap the screen, according to the school's regulations. Sophomores are not allowed to move off campus, and the dormitory arrangements couldn't be adjusted in time. Emily changed her phone number, suffering from insomnia and anxiety. She decided to go back to her long unvisited hometown to recuperate, after squatting by the stream for a long time. Her legs went numb. Emily snapped out of her chaotic thoughts, covered her growling stomach, and sat down on a round rock with her back to the bushes. She took out the lunch prepared in the basket. The lunch was made by her and Grandma. The steamed buns were soft and fluffy, when split in half. They were filled with tender braised meat that melted in the mouth and shredded cucumbers. With the gurgling of the stream and the dappled light and shadow shaken down by the wind through the treetops, she felt so comfortable that even her toes could curl up. She was so relaxed that she accidentally choked. Emily quickly put the half-eaten bun in the basket, picked up the water bottle, and took a few gulps. When she reached out to get the bun in the basket, her hand came up empty. Strange. She was sure she had put it in the basket. This is really weird. Emily stood up and searched carefully. The meat-filled bun seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Just as she was wondering, the bushes rustled. Then, a white, thin, human-like hand reached out from them, groped around in the basket, and there were clearly breadcrumbs on its sharp nails. Emily let out a scream, stumbled, and fell onto the round rock, gasping for breath. She stared blankly, thinking, is it a person? How could there be someone here? The thief in the bushes was obviously more panicked than her. The pale hand quickly retracted, knocking over the basket on the round rock. A few wild mushrooms rolled all over the ground. A white figure flashed by, and the person fled in a hurry. Compared to meeting wild animals, Emily was more afraid of meeting people in the deep mountains and forests. There were endless news stories about gangsters kidnapping girls into the mountains and brutally killing them. She grabbed the bamboo basket by the stream and started running. She didn't know how long she had been running when the familiar mountain path came into sight. Hey, Emily, Emily. Grandma came running from one end of the forest. Out of breath, she grabbed the running Emily and said, what are you running for, child? Grandma. Emily grabbed the old woman's warm, rough hand, pointed in the direction of the stream, and said incoherently, a wild man. There's a wild man in the mountains. He ate my bun. What wild man? Slow down. Look at how scared you are. Grandma couldn't help laughing after hearing this. She held her granddaughter's hand tightly and comforted her. It's probably someone else picking mushrooms. You must have been mistaken. Emily was skeptical. She thought to herself, could it be that my anxiety has gotten worse and I'm hallucinating? Emily suspected that she had seen the legendary monster. The mountain mist hadn't cleared. The fog seemed to come alive, spreading in all directions and climbing up along Emily's ankles. In the thick forest fog, a young boy wearing a half-animal bone mask hid behind a gnarled, moss-covered ancient tree. He peeked out at her, and the large robe on his body fluttered in the wind. No, it was more like a piece of old, yellowed rag rather than a large robe. It barely covered his lean and athletic body, coupled with the primitive and wild animal bone mask. It was eerie and mysterious. The monsters wear masks and appear on foggy days after rain or on full moon nights. If a lost girl accidentally sees their faces, they'll be carried away. Grandma's words seemed to be still ringing in her ears. Being stared at by that thing, Emily wanted to run, but it was as if she was entangled by the fog. Her whole body was stiff and she couldn't move. The sense of oppression from being stared at by that thing was beyond what a normal human could give, summoning up some unknown courage. Emily tremblingly rummaged through her small satchel, took out half an apple, and then a marinated chicken drumstick. She offered all of her remaining lunch with both hands, swallowed hard, and said in a trembling voice, here. It's all for you. Please don't eat me. Sensing the smell of food, the figure in the fog was very alert. After hesitating for a while, it suddenly rushed over and stopped right in front of Emily. The gust of wind it brought made the leaves rustle, and the fog scattered like disturbed spring water. In the howling wind, Emily's eyes widened, and she felt as if someone was choking her breath. The masked boy was very tall judging by his figure. Let's assume that thing was a boy. He lowered his head, and the tip of his nose exposed under the half-mask sniffed the apple in Emily's left hand. He turned his head in disdain, then sniffed the chicken drumstick in her right hand, and then opened his mouth and bit it off. Emily saw a pair of animal ears hidden in his silver-gray short hair and two sharp, white canines at the corners of his mouth. "Emily, where are you?" Grandma's call came from afar. Breaking the silence in the deep forest, the masked boy was startled. His golden-brown animal pupils suddenly shrank. With the chicken drumstick in his mouth, he leaped up into the treetops several times and disappeared into the endless darkness. The fog dissipated at a visible speed. Emily's hand holding the apple trembled slightly, and she let out a sigh of relief. "Grandma, do you think there could be wolf children in the deep mountains? Didn't you say that wolves used to come to the village and carry away other people's children on the way down the mountain?" Emily asked with lingering fear as she carried a basket of wild pears. "Grandma, carrying a bundle of firewood she had gathered, said slowly, "That's just what the old folks used to scare disobedient children. I remember the last time I heard the howl of a wolf in the mountains was the year your dad was born. It's been more than 40 years. The wolves in this area have probably been extinct for a long time. There's no such thing as a wolf child." It wasn't a wolf child, and he was wearing a mask. Emily was almost certain that she had encountered a monster. The town called on the able-bodied to go into the mountains to plant trees. Grandpa, who couldn't stand being idle, went into the mountains with the uncles in the town. Unexpectedly, by noon, dark clouds gathered, and it looked like it was going to rain heavily. Grandpa still hadn't come home. That old fool. He didn't bring an umbrella, and he even forgot his lunch. Grandma's rheumatism flared up. She leaned on the door frame, looking at the gloomy sky and sighing. "Oh, I wonder how he's going to get home." "Grandma, I'll go and send Grandpa an umbrella and lunch," Emily volunteered. She put on a raincoat and rain boots. "Put the steamed buns in a lunchbox to keep them warm and prevent them from getting wet by the rain." Grandma put a handful of White Rabbit creamy candies in her pocket and repeatedly told her to follow the path into the mountains, not to run around, and to be careful. Emily didn't have time to respond before she rushed out the door. When Emily woke up again, she had been washed to the foot of the mountain by the flash flood. Half of her body was submerged in the muddy stream, and she coughed violently. Spitting out a mouthful of muddy water, she vaguely remembered that she had gone into the mountains to send an umbrella to her grandpa. Suddenly, a fierce storm hit. Streaks of purple-white lightning struck the forest. She saw a faint golden light in the distance, like a firefly. Guiding her forward, Emily saw the young monster wearing the animal bone mask lying blackened and charred beside the path in the mountain gully. The golden light she had seen before was a pale golden bead, faintly floating in mid-air. Exuding a warm and subdued luster, the purple-white lightning struck not far away, splashing countless gravel. Worried that he would be struck to death by the lightning, Emily used all her strength to move him aside. However, she accidentally knocked off the half-mask on his face, revealing a handsome face with eyes tightly closed. It was an impeccable face of a young boy, as delicate as jade, shining with a soft light. He was even younger and more beautiful than she had imagined. Such a flawless face surely couldn't belong to a human. Another thunderclap struck nearby. In the distance, there was a loud rumble, and the earth shook. The flash flood burst forth, carrying mud and rushing down, instantly swallowing up the path in the mountain gully. In the chaos, Emily only had time to push the monster onto the slope, but then she slipped, let out a scream, and fell backwards into the torrent. After that, she couldn't remember anything, pulling herself out of her muddled thoughts. She coughed up the water in her stomach and struggled to turn over and sit up. Suddenly, she saw an incredibly beautiful silver-haired young boy squatting beside her. He was leaning over her chest, sniffing around as if looking for something. Was the monster going to eat her? Emily let out a hoarse scream and waved her hands. Shrinking backwards, the young boy with silver hair and animal-like pupils was startled by her instead. His ears stood up alertly. He bared his teeth and fled into the forest like a scared animal. Emily didn't know how she managed to flee back to the village. It all felt like a nightmare. On the way, she met her grandparents who had come to look for her. When the old couple saw her covered in mud, they hugged her affectionately. crying out in distress and talking about how terrified they were when the flash flood hit and she didn't return home from the mountains for so long. After calming her grandparents down, Emily went home, took a hot bath, and then fell into a deep sleep in bed and her dream. A monster with golden-flecked animal eyes stared at her coldly and said in a hoarse and strange voice, "Give back what you stole from me." She woke up with a start. The moonlight fell by the window, and the clock on the wall faintly pointed to 10 o'clock at night. There was a bowl of completely cold mung bean porridge and a plate of spiced beef on the bedside cabinet. Presumably, Grandma had brought them in case she was hungry. Emily got up, rubbing her faintly aching head, and noticed that the light in the bedroom was getting brighter and brighter. She thought hazily, "Why is the moonlight so blinding today?" It was not until she bent down to put on her slippers that she realized the pale golden light wasn't the moonlight from outside at all. Instead, it was bursting out from her chest. There was a pale golden bead in her left chest, as if there was a lamp lit there. Her whole body was radiating a holy golden light like that of a Buddha. Emily let out a terrified scream. The more panicked she was, the stronger the light from her chest became. It was as bright as a 200-watt light bulb, making the whole room as bright as day. What's going on? What's happening? Emily stumbled to her feet, bending over desperately to cover her chest, but the golden light still leaked through her fingers. Just as she was in a complete panic, a gust of wind blew through, fluttering the curtains and making the wooden window shutters rattle loudly. When the wind stopped, a tall and athletic figure appeared in the room. A long, powerful hand with sharp nails reached out from behind and grabbed Emily's hand that was covering her chest. A hoarse and strange voice said, "Control it." Emily's hairs stood on end. She recognized the voice. It was him, the monster wearing the animal bone mask. "Emily, is that you shouting?" The old wooden stairs creaked as Grandma came upstairs and knocked on Emily's door, sounding very worried. "Don't be afraid, dear. Grandma's here." "What happened?" Hiss. Suddenly, the grip on her wrist loosened. The monster took several steps back, bent over in an attacking posture, his fierce and beautiful eyes staring fixedly at the wooden door, bearing his row of white, sharp teeth. He was very alert, not wanting to scare Grandma. Emily quickly leaned against the door and said, "I'm fine, Grandma. I just saw a mouse, but I've already chased it away. Don't worry, go downstairs and sleep." Grandma replied with an, "Oh," not suspecting anything, and reminded, "There's food on the table. Don't go to bed hungry." After that, she slowly walked down the stairs, and the creaking sound faded away. Emily let out a sigh of relief. The monster's shadow fell on the door, tall and large, completely enveloping Emily. She held on to the doorknob, took several deep breaths, and then finally summoned up the courage to turn around and face this unexpected guest. Surprisingly, as soon as the monster appeared, the golden light that had been randomly spreading in her body finally subsided. The young monster stood by the window, looking at her. His light-colored short hair glistened like silver threads in the moonlight. Beneath the eye holes of the animal bone mask, a pair of golden animal eyes were both dangerous and beautiful. "So, this thing that's glowing in my body is actually your inner core." After listening to the monster's intermittent explanation, Emily huddled on the bed and asked cautiously. The monster narrowed his eyes and nodded. I didn't steal your inner core." Emily was eager to clear herself. "I was trying to save you and accidentally got washed away by the flood. When I woke up, I was like this. Thunderbolt. Injured." The young monster uttered a few stilted words and pointed to his stomach. "Inner core. Gone." Emily had to listen carefully to understand his fragmented and strange words. She probed. "Do you mean that the thunder and lightning that day was you going through a tribulation, and after you got injured, your inner core was struck out and somehow ended up in my body?" The monster didn't know what "by accident" meant, but he could understand the general idea and nodded. "Then, is there any way to give it back to you?" Although Emily was scared, she knew she couldn't keep something that didn't belong to her. The monster tilted his head, thought for a while, then took a few steps forward and stood by the bed. He bent over, propped his hands on the bed, and stared at the cowering Emily, saying word by word, "Eat you. Can you not eat me?" Emily's voice lacked confidence. She remembered that this monster loved to eat. Her hands subconsciously groped in her pockets and under the pillow. She only found a few white rabbit creamy candies. She tremblingly handed them to the monster, pleading like she was making a sacrifice. Here, all these delicious candies are for you. Please don't eat me. The tip of the monster's nose under the half-mask wrinkled. He leaned forward and sniffed the candies in Emily's hand. Sniffed again. Then stretched out his hand with sharp nails and gently picked up a candy. He threw it into his mouth along with the wrapper. Pa pa. The candy was spat out by him intact. There was a faint glimmer of dangerous anger in his golden-flecked animal eyes. That's not how you eat it. You have to peel off the wrapper. Emily demonstrated by peeling a candy herself and carefully handed it to the monster's mouth. Her voice tight. Try it. The monster sniffed it warily, then opened his mouth and gobbled up the candy right from her hand. Then he squinted his eyes in pleasure. Emily blankly wiped the saliva off her fingertips on her pajamas, staring at the monster who spat the candy into his palm, licked it twice, and then swallowed it again. She whispered, "Is there any other way to get back your inner core? If not, until you come up with a new way, I'm willing to prepare offerings for you every day. These delicious things. Please don't eat me." Okay. The monster didn't answer. He just stretched out a hand towards her, palm open, and gestured to her fiercely and indifferently. More. Emily quickly gave him all the candies. Grandma had said, monsters are always moody and insatiable. Amanda never dreamed that one day she would form a symbiotic relationship with a monster. From what the monster said, it seemed that he couldn't be away from his inner core for too long. Otherwise, he would gradually weaken and eventually revert to his original form and disappear from the world. So, until the monster came up with a way to retrieve his inner core other than eating her, Amanda had to run into the deep forest almost every day to send food offerings to the monster, allowing him to absorb the spiritual energy of the inner core so that she could save her own precarious life. At 6 in the morning, the eastern sky was already showing the gorgeous glow of the morning sun, while the stars and the moon in the west were still lingering over the mountaintops. The milky white fog in the forest surged like a tide, spreading wave after wave. A silver-haired monster boy sat on the rugged rocks at the top of the mountain, looking up at the waning moon in the sky and daydreaming. Amanda carried a basket and struggled to climb to the side of the monster. She handed him the freshly made beef burgers. The monster sniffed and indeed ate them with relish after getting along for these days. Amanda was no longer as afraid of him as she was at first. Feeling the cool breeze in the morning, she was so comfortable that all her pores seemed to open up. She said, "The wind here is so comfortable. The mountain is breathing." The monster said, with a beef burger in his mouth. "The wind is the mountain's breath." Amanda felt an indescribable touch in her heart and said with a smile, "That's such a beautiful way of saying it. It's so poetic." The monster just buried his head in eating the burger and didn't understand what poetic meant. Looking down at the valley from here, the fog had not dissipated yet. In the churning fog of the mountain stream, a long, black snake could be faintly seen tumbling in the water mist, as if soaring through the clouds, which was a spectacular sight. Amanda's eyes widened. She stood up subconsciously and looked into the distance. After looking for a long time, she realized that it wasn't a black snake, but a dragon, a jet black dragon with wings. "There's a dragon." She was so excited that she couldn't speak properly. Her face turned bright red. Pointing at the black dragon that was breathing clouds and mist in the mountain stream, she said, "This is the first time I've seen a winged dragon. I never thought the legend was true. That's a wyvern." The monster explained to her in a flat tone. After eating the last beef burger, the monster still wanted more. His amber eyes stared at Amanda and said, "More. I'll make some for you tomorrow." After the wyvern disappeared, Amanda's heart was pounding. It was not until the familiar golden light lit up again in her chest that she came back to her senses. She covered her chest and tried to take a deep breath, saying, Sorry, I'll control it." The monster stared at her chest, as if looking at a piece of meat on a chopping board, with a dangerous glint in his eyes, afraid that he would have the idea of eating her again. Amanda quickly moved aside and changed the subject. She asked, "By the way, may I ask, what kind of monster are you?" Her eyes fell on the two animal ears on the monster's head. She hesitated and said, "Judging by your ears, are you a fox, a wolf, or some other magical animal. The monster sat cross-legged and turned his head to look at her. There was a hint of confusion in his calm golden animal eyes. What do you look like? Amanda had seen his face when his mask fell off. It was so beautiful that it seemed unreal, and she wanted to see it again. She reached out her hand, wanting to touch the monster's animal bone mask. The monster seemed to be startled. He suddenly turned his head and buried his face in his palms, covering it tightly. Oh, he's shy. Then, do you have a name? Amanda asked again. The monster still covered his face and shook his head slightly. I'll give you a name, Amanda said cheerfully, looking at the sky where the sun and the moon were alternating. Your eyes are as golden as the sun, and your hair and skin are as white as the moonlight, just like the sun and the moon in the sky right now. You're so special. How about Aurora? The monster paused, then slowly opened his fingers, revealing one golden eye. Looking at Amanda, he repeated, Aurora. Amanda said in a brisk tone, yeah, I read in a book that Aurora represents the dawn and is also related to the sun and the moon. It suits you perfectly. The monster neither nodded nor shook his head. He just put down his hand and looked at the sky. His silver-white short hair fluttered in the wind, and no one knew what he was thinking that night. The sacred white wolf monster ran through every corner of the deep mountains and valleys in the moonlight, telling every monster, every tree, every stone, and every gust of wind it met that it had a name. It was called Aurora. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the end of August. Aurora, I'm going back to New York to study, Amanda said, her voice tinged with a hint of sadness. She twirled a wild daisy in her hand and said nervously, I have to leave here the day after tomorrow. Aurora, who was gnawing on a chicken drumstick, suddenly stopped. He turned his head and stared at her quietly. I've thought about it. Since your inner core is still in me, you can't be too far away from me. So, would you? She took a deep breath, looked up, and asked bravely, would you like to come with me? I promise I'll get you delicious food every day until we find a way to take back your inner core without harming me. Aurora only thought for a couple of seconds, then returned his attention to the chicken drumstick and nodded briskly. Amanda couldn't believe how easy it was. She was almost in a state of disbelief. After a while, she started to worry again. She gently pinched Aurora's animal ears and looked at his unusual hair color, saying distressingly, but you don't look human at all. How can I take you down the mountain? Aurora chewed the chicken bone noisily, swallowed it, and licked his fingers. Shifting form requires spiritual power, and my inner core is with you. After more than a month, he could express himself quite smoothly. What should we do then? Amanda asked. Is there any other way to help you shift form? Yes. Aurora's eyes sparkled as he stared at her. Borrow power. Just as Amanda was about to ask how to borrow power, a shadow loomed over her. Aurora slightly lifted his mask, lowered his head, and suddenly kissed her on the lips. Amanda never expected that her first kiss, which she had cherished for 20 years, would be taken away by a monster in such a way so wild, overbearing, and without hesitation. A gentle breeze blew in the morning. The dewdrops reflected the sunlight like crystals. Amanda's eyes widened, and she held her breath, forced to tilt her head up to meet his warm lips. She seemed to see the slender moonlight and the golden sea of light intertwined in front of her eyes. A dazzling sight, but soon she understood what borrowing power meant. The demonic power surging in her chest flowed into Aurora's body through their closely pressed lips. His appearance changed remarkably at a visible speed. His animal ears disappeared, replaced by human ears. His silver hair and golden animal eyes turned black. Even his sharp nails became round and neat. Standing in the morning sun now was a handsome human boy with black hair and black eyes. When their lips parted, Aurora looked at his broad and long palms, then touched his fair earlobes. His eyes full of curiosity. Amanda stood there stiffly. Her body felt as if all her strength had been drained, and she was limp. She opened her mouth, but her throat seemed to be blocked. She had so much to say but didn't know where to start. Her face was as red as the morning glow. Her heart was pounding. The powerful demonic power filled her limbs, making her whole body glow with a strong golden light. That she's glowing again. Aurora tilted his head slightly and looked at her in confusion. Amanda hurriedly covered her chest and turned around, saying, "It's okay. I can control it. I'll be fine once I calm down." After finally calming down, Amanda felt a bit embarrassed. She clenched her fists and tried to act calm as she turned around. Facing this familiar yet strange boy, she didn't know where to look. Finally, she pointed at the tattered clothes on Aurora and said, "This ragged cloth is too strange. Can you change your clothes too?" Aurora curled his fingers and then released them, saying, "I don't have enough power. I need to borrow more." With that, he took a step forward. About to kiss Amanda again to borrow spiritual power, Amanda was so frightened that she stepped back quickly. She stammered nervously, "And never mind. I'll bring you a set of clothes tomorrow." Then, she ran down the mountain clumsily and disappeared into the winding and quiet forest path, the day before returning to the city. Amanda suddenly brought back an incredibly handsome boy. She introduced him to her grandparents seriously. "Grandpa, Grandma, this is my classmate, Aurora. He's here for a visit, and he'll go back to school with me tomorrow." This classmate, Aurora, was wearing the same muscle shirt and baggy shorts as Grandpa, and had a pair of slippers on his feet. Even so, his unique aura couldn't be hidden. He stood tall and straight, like a model who had just walked off the catwalk. There was no other choice. This was the only kind of men's clothing available in the small town. Seeing that Aurora didn't respond for a long time, Amanda secretly tugged at the hem of his shirt. Aurora first showed a confused expression, then shrank behind Amanda. He lowered his head and remained silent, his eyes full of resistance and vigilance. "Amanda, your classmate doesn't seem easy to get along with." Grandma pulled Amanda aside secretly and asked in a low voice. "He couldn't be some street tough guy, could he?" "No, Grandma. He's just a bit shy and not good at interacting with people." Just then, the TV in the living room turned on. When Aurora saw a figure suddenly appear in that big metal box, he jumped up immediately. He flipped over and hid behind the rattan-woven sofa, only showing a pair of vigilant eyes over the back of the sofa, as if facing a great threat. Grandma sighed. "This kid doesn't seem very smart. He's so jumpy." Amanda broke into a cold sweat and forced a smile. "Yeah, anyway, we'll leave tomorrow. Please be patient with him, you and Grandpa." Amanda pulled Aurora into the bedroom on the second floor. It took her a great deal of effort to explain to him that the big metal box was called a TV, an entertainment device that could show pictures. And it wasn't something scary, however. Problems arose again during dinner. This was Aurora's first time going down the mountain, and he hadn't adapted to human customs yet. He actually started eating with his hands. Amanda felt like her heart was about to stop. She quickly held down Aurora's hand, which was covered in rice grains, and forced herself to explain to her grandparents. "My classmate here is from an ethnic minority. Right. They're used to eating with their hands." With that, she quickly scooped a bowl of food and dragged Aurora up to the second floor. "Grandpa, Grandma, I'll take him upstairs to eat." On the second floor, under the dim yellow light, Amanda sat beside Aurora and taught him how to use chopsticks to pick up food, saying, "Aurora, when you enter human society in the future, you have to follow human rules. You can't do whatever you want like before. Otherwise, people will ostracize and dislike you. Do you understand? If I'm different from humans, I'll be disliked." Aurora suddenly asked. Frowning as if he couldn't understand at all, Amanda was taken aback. Looking at her curvy figure reflected in the glass window, she suddenly remembered the humiliation and rumors spread by Chloe and those people. She smiled helplessly. "Yeah, sometimes humans are just that strange." "Do you dislike me too?" Aurora asked again. "No, I don't," Amanda said hurriedly. "It's easy and comfortable to get along with you. Compared to monsters, human hearts are the most unpredictable." Aurora struggled to pick up the rice with chopsticks and frowned. "This is so troublesome." Amanda lay on the table, looking at him, the warm light from the lamp reflected in her eyes, and a gentle and peaceful smile spread across her face. Aurora didn't have an ID, so he was in a situation where he couldn't take the high-speed rail. Amanda had to borrow an ID from a friend to book a long-distance bus ticket. After 7 or 8 hours of bumpy travel, she finally brought him back to New York. Aurora got carsick, sitting in the back of the bus. His body was as stiff as a rock, seeing that he didn't look well and there was a faint golden glow flickering in his black eyes. Amanda felt a bit nervous. She quickly covered his eyes, looked around, and whispered, "Hey, Aurora. You're not going to turn back into a monster on the bus, are you? Please don't. That would be a huge mess." Uncomfortable, Aurora tilted his head and leaned on her shoulder, saying in a low voice, "We're almost in the city. Hang in there," Amanda said, feeling restless herself. She coaxed him, "Be good. I'll buy you something delicious when we arrive." Before she could finish speaking, Aurora turned his head and kissed her on the lips to absorb spiritual power. After a while, he let go of his thin lips and said, "I feel better." Then, he closed his long eyelashes and fell asleep. He was fine. But Amanda wasn't. She turned her head to look out of the window at the scenery passing by quickly, covered her chest, and tried to calm her racing heart so as not to turn into a glowing firefly. On the bus, this semester, Amanda would be a junior. She had previously asked her friend Olivia to rent an apartment outside the school. After getting off the bus at the station, she took a taxi directly to the newly rented house, after transferring the rent to Olivia. Most of the savings Amanda had painstakingly saved from writing articles were gone. Suitcases were scattered all over the floor, and the house was in a mess and hadn't been cleaned up yet. Amanda went downstairs and bought 2 bags of daily necessities. She simply swept and mopped the floor, and then cleaned the bathroom and the bedroom. While she was working, Aurora followed her like a little tail, staying close to her all the time, full of the nervousness and unease of Mr. Monster's first entry into the human world. At 10 o'clock at night, Amanda was so tired that she couldn't even lift a finger. She forced herself to stay awake to take a bath. After drying her wet hair, she opened the door and bumped right into Aurora's arms while she was taking a bath. Aurora had been guarding outside the bathroom all the time. "I haven't finished cleaning the living room yet, and the things haven't been put away either. But I'm really exhausted. You'll have to make do with the sofa tonight. I'll clean your room tomorrow," Amanda said, her eyes heavy with sleep. She pointed in the direction of the bathroom. "The bathtub is full of water. You can take a bath later." "I wish I could use my demonic power to clean the room." Amanda sighed. She closed the bedroom door behind her, leaving Aurora, who had been following her closely. Outside, Aurora stood in front of the master bedroom door for a while. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the city was bustling with lights and noise. But he felt lonelier and more desolate than in the deep mountains and old forests. Suddenly, a faint golden light flashed in the darkness. Aurora closed his eyes and activated his spiritual power. A gentle breeze blew the curtains. The dust and dirt on the ground seemed to be wiped away by an invisible hand. The luggage and sundries automatically sorted themselves out, and even the withered plant in the corner sprouted new buds and bloomed, showing a vibrant scene. When Aurora opened his eyes again, the golden light disappeared, and the room became bright and clean. Looking brand new, feeling tired, he wanted to go to the balcony to catch some air and feel the city's vibe. But he accidentally bumped into the glass of the floor-to-ceiling window. The young monster was very curious about this transparent barrier. He reached out and poked the smooth glass, then pressed his 2 palms against it, like a lonely child longing for the candies in the shop window. He let out a long and lonely howl towards the strange and cold moon in the city. Late at night, he staggered into the bathroom and submerged himself in the water. His clothes were soaked and stuck to his body uncomfortably. Plus, he had overused his spiritual power just now, so he couldn't maintain his human form anymore. His animal ears and a big, furry tail appeared. His tail got stuck in his underwear, which was extremely uncomfortable, so he simply took off all his clothes. He shook his wet silver hair like a big dog and walked towards the bedroom, leaving a trail of wet footprints. Early the next morning, Amanda turned over in bed and reflexively stretched. Her hand landed on a smooth and muscular back. She was stunned for a moment and subconsciously touched it. The skin under her palm felt great. The drowsiness disappeared instantly. She opened her eyes and took a look, then let out a scream. Blushing, she shrank back and said, Why are you in my bed? And where are your clothes?" The beautiful young man with silver hair, animal ears, and a big tail in front of her was none other than Aurora, and he was completely naked. The clothes were wet and uncomfortable. Aurora woke up, propped himself up on the bed, and his firm abdominal muscles were fully exposed. Don't sit up. Amanda quickly grabbed the quilt and covered him. Barely covering his embarrassing private parts, a faint golden light started to shine from her again. She gritted her teeth and asked, "By the way, Aurora, why did you turn back into your original form again?" "Work. Too tired." Aurora really didn't look well. Plus, being naked. He looked like he had overindulged. The beautiful young monster moved closer to Amanda, wrinkled his nose and sniffed gently at her shoulder. He called out hoarsely, "Amanda, give me." And the next second, he accurately kissed her lips following her breath. He used his lips and tongue, greedily absorbing spiritual power because he was so hungry and weak. This time it was more intense than any previous time. This had far exceeded the scope of borrowing power. Amanda's face turned red, and her body emitted a strong golden light like a miner's lamp before the new semester started. Amanda went to her dormitory. She planned to move out her clothes and other things while Chloe and the others hadn't arrived yet. Aurora naturally went with her, since the dorm's supervisor was strict. Amanda told him to wait obediently downstairs. As soon as she opened the dormitory door, she saw Olivia looking worried. Olivia pointed at Amanda's wardrobe and said, "Amanda, that mean-spirited Chloe cut up all your clothes." Amanda rushed forward. Most of the t-shirts, jackets, and pants in the wardrobe had been cut by scissors, and only a few coats were left intact. "Call the police." "Amanda," Olivia comforted her, "the more you back down, the more arrogant she gets. Even if her family is rich and powerful, she can't act like this. Amanda calmed down, took out her phone, and took pictures of the wardrobe as evidence. Then she said, "Thanks for your help, Olivia." "Ah, I didn't really do much for you." Just then, a shrill and noisy laugh came from the corridor. It was Chloe. She said, "Hey, that handsome guy downstairs is so good-looking. He's like he walked out of a comic book. Do you think he'll give me his phone number if I go downstairs to ask for it later?" Another voice, Sarah's, said exaggeratedly, "Chloe, you're so beautiful. How could he refuse you? Oh no. Why is she here at school early?" Olivia mouthed to Amanda silently and said anxiously, "Quick, hide in the bathroom. That woman will go crazy if she sees you." Amanda turned on her phone's recording function, put it in her pocket, and stood still. Chloe pushed the door open and entered. When she saw Amanda, the smile on her red lips disappeared instantly. She kicked a stool aside and deliberately made her suitcase rattle loudly. "Chloe, did you cut up my clothes?" Amanda asked. "So what if I did?" Chloe sneered, crossing her arms. "Who knows how you got those clothes? Maybe you got them by flirting with some man. They were taking up space in our dorm, and I thought they were dirty." "Chloe, watch your mouth." Olivia couldn't help but interrupt. Chloe sneered, rolled her eyes, and said arrogantly, "Mind your own business. She's the other woman who broke up my relationship. Am I wrong?" Amanda frowned, clenched her fists, and tried to speak in a calm tone. "Chloe, I'll say this one more time. These clothes, just like me, are innocent. Your boyfriend broke up with you has nothing to do with me. It's just that one of you is moody and the other is flirtatious. Please stop your baseless suspicions and bullying." "Okay, you hypocrite. How dare you argue back?" Chloe flew into a rage. She grabbed Amanda's hair and screamed, "Who are you calling moody? Ha! Goo!" With two loud, bang, sounds, the force pulling Amanda's hair disappeared. And Chloe let out a painful scream. Amanda opened her eyes. Breathing heavily, she saw Chloe and Sarah were thrown 2 or 3 meters away. They were lying on the ground, moaning in pain while covering their waists and heads. Aurora stood behind Amanda. His beast-like eyes stared fiercely at Chloe and he growled, "Don't touch her." Chloe's lips trembled, and fear was clearly visible in her eyes. She stammered, You're all monsters." The golden light in Amanda's chest started to surge and was about to get out of control. With messy hair, she looked at her roommates in the dormitory, who were either terrified or scared. She covered her chest and took a panicked step back. She saw that sharp nails grew on Aurora's hands. Obviously, he was on the verge of transforming into his monster form. He asked, "Amanda, can I eat them?" "No, Aurora. Not here. Let's go home. Right now." Amanda held his hand tightly in return. Without bothering to pick up her clothes, she dragged him and ran out of the dormitory building desperately. The new semester started, and an explosive piece of news emerged on the school's campus forum. It was rumored that Amanda, who was known as the serial homewrecker and the vixen, had a new boyfriend. He was an extremely handsome young man and was very clingy. When Amanda went to the lecture hall for classes, he would lie down beside her and sleep, never leaving her side. There were several candid photos attached to the post. In the pictures, Aurora was wearing a white t-shirt and lying on the table by the window in the last row. His eyes were gently closed. His eyelashes were thick and long. His nose was straight, and his fair skin was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. As if with a soft focus effect, even the most popular male celebrities couldn't compare to him. Among the replies, there were those who envied, those who were jealous, and those who blatantly tried to steal him away. There were also a few vulgar comments like, "How good is Amanda in bed to have tricked such a handsome young man into being her boyfriend?" There was also a comment saying, "Amanda is a vixen with witchcraft. That's why she can seduce so many men." This comment was posted from Chloe's account, but it was quickly pushed down by other comments and didn't cause much of a stir. Amanda quit the forum. She looked at Aurora, who was sitting alone on the sofa watching TV, for a long time. Then she suddenly said, "Aurora, starting from tomorrow, you don't need to go to class with me." She felt uncomfortable seeing so many people gossiping about and coveting him. Moreover, during this period, she always felt that someone was following and peeping at her and Aurora. Aurora didn't understand. He tilted his head with a confused expression and asked, "Why?" "There's no special reason. This place is very close to the school. I'll come back right after class. It won't be a problem." Seeing that Aurora didn't respond, Amanda felt a bit guilty because of her selfishness. After fumbling for a while, she took out 2 White Rabbit creamy candies from her pocket and handed them to Aurora. "Be good. Want some candies?" For the first time, Aurora refused her offering. He lowered his head, looking even more dejected. "Come on, tell me what happened that day." In the coffee shop, Olivia was referring to the conflict that occurred in the dormitory. "What exactly was going on?" "It seemed that your boyfriend suddenly rushed out and flicked his finger. Then a light burst from your chest, and Chloe and the other girl were sent flying. It was like you had superpowers. To be honest, are you guys Terminators from the future? Or some hidden identity superheroes?" Amanda stirred the coffee in her cup with a small spoon, propped her chin, and sighed softly. "Olivia, I really don't know how to explain it. Please don't ask." "Okay. Forget about that. Let's talk about that handsome guy." Olivia's gossip spirit was fully ignited. She leaned forward and asked, "You two are living together, right? When did you manage to get such a handsome boyfriend? You're amazing. Hey, does he have any brothers? Introduce one to me." Amanda opened her mouth but didn't know where to start. Her mind was in a mess. She herself didn't even know what kind of relationship she had with Aurora, or what kind of relationship she expected to have. "I'm not sure. I think I've really fallen for him," Amanda said, "but he doesn't know anything. We're just tied together by some accident." Olivia couldn't understand, so she gave up trying. She brought 2 big bags of things to Amanda's side. "I brought you all the clothes and shoes that you can still wear. I'll bring your books and materials to the classroom tomorrow. Don't worry, Amanda. Be confident. Since you're living together, that handsome guy must like you too. Like me. If only monsters could understand what love was." At 6:30 p.m. After saying goodbye to Olivia and walking back from the coffee shop, Amanda vaguely saw a bright light flash quickly at the entrance of the community, accompanied by a click sound. Like the sound of a camera shutter, Amanda turned around alertly and saw a familiar figure in a beret disappear behind a corner. She frowned and walked quickly to the corner. She grabbed Chloe, who was holding a phone and trying to sneak away. "What are you doing? Let me go," Chloe bluffed, trying to break free from Amanda's grip forcefully. "Have you been following me and Aurora these days?" Amanda asked. "I don't know what you're talking about. Get out of my way." Chloe pushed Amanda aside and tried to run away. "You can leave, but delete everything in your phone first." Amanda held Chloe's hand tightly. Let go. Chloe flew into a rage out of humiliation and slapped Amanda across the face. Her nails scratched Amanda's cheek. Amanda's hair at the temples became messy, and her body trembled slightly. In the next moment, a harder slap landed on Chloe's face, making her scream. Amanda, how dare you hit me? Chloe covered her face, her eyes wide with disbelief. Apparently, she never expected that Amanda, who had always been easygoing, would fight back. Amanda didn't say anything. She slapped Chloe on the other side of her face. Chloe's high-heeled shoes twisted, and she stumbled, leaning against the wall, too frightened to say a word. Chloe, listen up. Just because I'm easygoing doesn't mean I'll let you bully me. You spread rumors and slandered me first, then followed and secretly photographed us. You even destroyed all my clothes and shoes. Do you really think I'm afraid to call the police? After saying this calmly, Amanda snatched Chloe's phone. The phone wasn't locked. She found all the secretly taken photos and videos in the album, most of which were of Aurora. There was a video secretly taken in the community last night. At that time, Amanda's keychain rolled under the vending machine. Aurora easily lifted the vending machine with one hand, allowing Amanda to get her keychain back. It was already 11 p.m. last night, and the location was facing away from the surveillance camera. Amanda thought no one in the community saw it, but she didn't expect Chloe to be hiding in the corner, spying on them. Feeling a wave of disgust, Amanda quickly deleted all the relevant videos and photos, emptied the recycle bin, and then threw the phone back into Chloe's arms. From today on, I won't back down anymore. Amanda, you're living with a monster, Chloe shouted crazily from behind. I'll find the evidence. Just you wait. After dinner, Amanda put on her headphones and nestled on the sofa, writing her manuscript. Aurora sat beside her, hugging his knees and watching TV. Suddenly, Aurora gently nudged Amanda's shoulder and asked, do humans also need to transfer spiritual power? Amanda looked puzzled. She took off her headphones and looked up. It turned out that the male and female protagonists in the romance drama were kissing. Her face turned red immediately. She stammered, they're kissing, not transferring spiritual power. Kissing. Aurora was very confused. He tilted his head, his face full of doubts. They don't need spiritual power, but they rely on each other. Amanda thought for a while and tried her best to explain. Kissing is a way for humans to express love. Love. Aurora quickly had a new question. Love means liking someone, having a crush on them. Amanda, who had never been in a relationship before, scratched her neck. Running out of words, Aurora seemed to understand but not fully. With the glow of the TV in his eyes, which reflected Amanda's figure, he asked softly, do humans use this way to court? Amanda snapped her fingers. Yes, it's kind of like how you monsters court. Aurora nodded, indicating that he understood. After a while, he said thoughtfully, in our wolf clan, we only recognize one mate in our lifetime. His deep and serious tone was like the wind blowing through the forest, gently tugging at her heartstrings. As soon as she received her monthly, Amanda went to the street and bought a new mobile phone. During the holidays, the traffic was extremely congested, and the bus was late. Amanda was only wearing a thin coat and was shivering in the autumn wind. Just as she was getting anxious, a young man with long hair squeezed out of the crowd. He squinted his phoenix-like eyes and stared straight at Amanda. His gaze was bold and somewhat obscure. The man was wearing a cyan blue short coat and long trousers. His long hair was tied up on top of his head like an ancient person's. He shook his head while looking at Amanda and kept saying, this is not good. Miss, your glabella is dark, and there's a trace of deathly aura remaining in your body. It's really not good. This strange person was probably a charlatan. Well, I'll do a good deed today. I'll exorcise the evil spirit for you for free. The young man looked at her with pity. No, thanks. When the bus arrived, Amanda quickly squeezed onto it with the crowd, getting rid of the man's harassment after a long and winding journey. It was already 8 p.m. When she reached the front of the apartment building, Amanda was worried that something might happen to Aurora, who was alone at home. She rushed home in a hurry but met someone head-on downstairs. Amanda, you live here. It was Jack, Chloe's ex-boyfriend. The one who had caused Amanda to be involved in the other woman scandal. Amanda had no time and no need to exchange pleasantries with him. She replied perfunctorily and was about to go upstairs. But Jack enthusiastically tried to take the paper bag in her hand, saying with a smile, "It's not easy for you to carry these things. Let me help you upstairs." This playboy really flirted with everyone. Amanda hated him so much. She frowned and quickly said, "No need." But Jack persisted. He grabbed the paper bag from her hand and insisted on sending her to her apartment. During this process, he deliberately stroked Amanda's hand several times. His flirting was both clumsy and obvious. Amanda quickly withdrew her hand, feeling extremely uncomfortable and disgusted. Just as she was about to say something harsh, a tall and slender figure suddenly appeared from the side. The person grabbed Jack's misbehaving hand tightly and ordered coldly, "Let go." Aurora. Amanda's frown relaxed, and her eyes lit up. Jack winced in pain and let go of the bag awkwardly. He threw the paper bag on the ground and then turned around and ran away. Aurora rarely wore a baseball cap, which made him look even more handsome and youthful, like a sports-themed beautiful boy in a comic. He picked up the paper bag on the ground, gently and carefully dusted it off, and then turned to Amanda and said in a muffled voice, "Let's go home." After getting out of the elevator and entering the house, Amanda changed her shoes at the entrance and asked, "Why did you come downstairs? I sensed that you were in danger. I don't like that man touching your hand." With that, he suddenly turned around, hugged Amanda, and pinned her against the wall. His voice was hoarse and low as he said, "You've been out for so long. I was alone at home, waiting so anxiously that my ears almost popped out." After that, he took off his baseball cap dejectedly, revealing two animal ears on top of his head. The ears drooped, and his head also hung down. He looked extremely. Amanda's heart softened. She obediently tilted her head back and let him freely absorb the abundant spiritual power in her body. 10 minutes later, Aurora returned to his complete human form. He lay on the sofa, closing his eyes contentedly. Amanda sat at the other end of the sofa, letting Aurora rest his head on her lap. Neither of them paid attention to what was on TV. Amanda's fingers casually stroked Aurora's soft black hair. She asked, "Aurora, have you thought of a way to take back your inner core?" Aurora said, "Not yet. Let's wait a little longer." How much longer? She thought greedily that it would be great if it could be a lifetime. The mobile phone was bought for Aurora. Amanda was worried that he would be bored at home, so she specifically taught him how to kill time with it. Aurora had just learned to send voice messages on Facebook Messenger yesterday. While Amanda was in class, she suddenly heard the ringtone of Facebook Messenger. Taking advantage of the teacher not paying attention, she secretly took out her phone from her bag. When she opened the Facebook Messenger interface, she saw that Aurora had sent a 30-second voice message. She turned down the volume and put the phone to her ear to listen carefully. However, the first 29 seconds were blank, with only a faint rustling sound of electric current passing through her eardrums, just when she thought it was a blank voice message. Finally, in the last second, she heard Aurora's low and hoarse voice. There were only 2 words. He said, "Hello." This was Aurora's first voice message. "Hello." It was so cute. Amanda felt her heart melt. She listened to that "hello" several times after enduring the 29-second blank, and she had a smile on her face throughout the whole class. In winter, it gets dark early. After class in the evening, Amanda bought the roast chicken that Aurora loved. She hummed a tune and walked briskly towards home. However, there was a man leaning against the street lamp in the garden of the apartment complex. He smiled and said, "Girl, we meet again." It was the young Taoist priest she had met at the bus stop before. No, he was actually a charlatan sensing the fluctuation of spiritual power. Aurora, who was waiting at home, pricked up his ears and rushed downstairs alertly. Under the street lamp next to the garden, a paper bag lay on the ground, revealing the still warm roast chicken inside. Amanda's small handbag was scattered 3 steps away, but she was nowhere to be seen. A wave of unprecedented panic welled up in Aurora's heart. His pupils instantly turned demonic. He picked up the handbag on the ground, sniffed it at the tip of his nose, and then followed Amanda's scent. "Someone said you had magic and paid me a large sum of money to subdue you. I originally thought she was mistaken. After all, these days, monsters are all trying to blend in with humans and rarely cause trouble. But it turns out this trip wasn't in vain. I've landed a big deal. On the empty rooftop of the tall building, the cold wind was howling. The young, Taoist priest stood against the wind, wearing round framed sunglasses. Looking quite otherworldly, he said slowly. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I'm just interested in the owner of that inner core in your body. After all, it's rare to find a monster who is willing to use their lifelong cultivation to save a dead person. What did you say? Amanda was tied to a chair with her hands behind her back. Her lips trembled slightly. It was hard to tell if she was shivering from the cold or shocked by what the Taoist priest had just said. She asked anxiously. Dead person? What dead person? You're quite good at getting to the point. The Taoist priest turned to look at her, pushed his sunglasses onto his head, and squinted with a smile. Sometimes, the truth can be cruel. It might be better to forget. If you don't live well, how can you repay the monster's deep affection for you? Speak clearly. Amanda was shaking all over. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the Taoist priest. What exactly do you mean? Tisk. So feisty. Are you really sure you want to remember? No regrets. The Taoist priest shook his head repeatedly, looking very regretful. He stretched out his finger, made a gesture, and tapped Amanda's glabella. You asked for this. The torrential rain, the thunder and lightning, the injured monster by the mountain stream, and the bursting flash flood. Images flashed through her mind one by one. Amanda saw herself lying under a bamboo bridge at the foot of the mountain. Wearing a raincoat, her face was deathly pale, her lips slightly parted, her nostrils filled with mud and dirt, her eyes half open, and her dull pupils reflecting the floating clouds after the rain. Clearly, she had no signs of life. She remembered. She had already drowned in that flash flood. It was only by chance that she swallowed the inner core left behind by Aurora, which gave her the chance to come back to life and survive until now. No wonder Aurora wasn't in a hurry to get back his inner core. No wonder he said that once the inner core left her body, she would die. So that's how it was. That's the truth. It wasn't her helping Aurora. It was Aurora saving her all along. He's here. The sky was covered with dark clouds, blocking the moon. A sudden gust of wind blew. The Taoist priest's words pulled Amanda out of her painful thoughts. She raised her red and swollen eyes from crying and saw a huge white wolf descending from the sky like a god. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. Run, Aurora, she pleaded with a choked voice. Take back what belongs to you and leave here. After the fierce battle, the rooftop was in a mess. The huge white wolf's snow-white fur was covered with bloodstains, but its gaze towards Amanda was extremely gentle. It opened its mouth, and blood dripped continuously from between its sharp, interlaced fangs. Despite being extremely weak, it stubbornly bit at the knot that bound Amanda's wrists. The Taoist priest stood by, with his hands behind his back, watching leisurely. He sighed. So it's a rare white wolf monster. It's a pity that its cultivation level isn't high enough. Its inner core has been away from its body for too long, and now it's very weak. It couldn't even withstand half of my power. Forget it. I'm not interested in bullying the kind and weak. If you ever do something evil in the future, I'll come back to enforce justice. With that, the young Taoist priest stretched out his hand, made a gesture, and disappeared in the swirling sand and stones. Surprisingly, he actually let Amanda and Aurora go. Finally, the knot was bitten through. Amanda couldn't wait to hold the huge head of the white wolf and kissed its bloody mouth, trying to transfer her spiritual power to it. Fortunately, this method worked. The white wolf's figure shrank instantly, transforming into a half-human form with silver hair and animal ears. Aurora, I remember everything. It was your inner core that saved me. Amanda gently wiped the bloodstains from the corner of Aurora's mouth. Tears streamed down her face. She choked and asked, You actually knew how to retrieve your inner core a long time ago, right? Then why didn't you take it back? If I take it back, you'll die. If you die, no one will make delicious food for me. In the moonlight, Aurora's golden-flecked animal eyes looked at her calmly and gently. He said hoarsely, Also, the first human who sees a monster's true appearance is supposed to be taken away as a bride. I don't want you to die. You silly. Amanda hugged Aurora and couldn't help sobbing. Aurora had a fever that wouldn't go down. His body was as hot as a furnace. Amanda took 2 days off to take care of him at home. She was so worried that she paced around restlessly. She kept wringing out towels and applying ice packs, placing her hand on Aurora's still burning forehead. She was filled with anxiety. Aurora, don't scare me. If you keep having this fever, will it damage your brain? Do human medicines work for you? Aurora's ears and tail emerged. His silver-white short hair fell messily on the pillow. He opened his mouth and gasped. I've been away from my hometown for too long. There's not enough spiritual energy, so I feel weak and uncomfortable. His voice was weak, and even his breath was scalding hot. Amanda's eyes turned red with anxiety and heartache. She said desperately, how about this? Take back your inner core. If you do, you'll get better. No. Aurora suddenly opened his eyes and firmly refused. Amanda continued. Then what should we do? We've kissed, but it still didn't make you feel better. The power borrowed from kissing is far from enough. There's actually another way. The greedy monster narrowed his beautiful but dangerous eyes. His hand with sharp nails pressed on Amanda's shoulder. And then he suddenly rolled over and pinned her beneath him. Amanda froze. She could feel Aurora's scorching breath as he whispered hoarsely in her ear. Are you willing to give it a try? Aurora's animal ears drooped, and his big, fluffy tail swayed gently behind him, looking very pleasing. And Amanda simply couldn't resist. After that, Amanda lay on the bed with a blushing face, too tired to even lift a finger, looking at the contentedly sleeping Aurora beside her. She thought in a daze. So, there's a special way of power sharing that can really make him recover. At that moment, the human and the monster seemed to become one. The abundant demonic power flowed through their bodies, enough to drive away all the weakness and illness. Not long after, Chloe's father was investigated and punished for embezzlement and bribery. Chloe dropped out of school and disappeared without a trace. 2 years later, Amanda returned to Greenfield Town to live in seclusion and became a somewhat well-known freelance writer. The town was surrounded by green mountains and clear waters, and was often enshrouded in mist. Life went on quietly and comfortably. Every day, there was a monster who pretended to be human and stuck to her side all the time. At night, he would reveal his true form and absorb her spiritual power without restraint. After having her spiritual power absorbed each time, Amanda often had to stay in bed for half a day. The next day before she could get up, the monster taught her how to love nature, to feel the breathing of the mountains and the tenderness of the moon. He took her to every corner of Greenfield Town, introduced her to the various monsters in the mountains, and made her understand that in this world, besides humans, there were so many amazing creatures worthy of respect. Amanda taught this reserved and wild monster how to live in human society. She taught him how to read, surf the internet, and showed him the brilliant civilization of humanity over thousands of years. Amanda also helped him get a household registration. And more importantly, she taught him what love was. There was a power outage. Everything in sight was pitch black. Amanda sighed and said, the electrical circuit is too old. It keeps tripping. I'll go check it out. Aurora, who had learned many human skills from the uncles in the town, volunteered. Amanda immediately grabbed him. Hey, don't go. I'm a little scared. So Aurora sat back beside Amanda in the darkness. His eyes glowed with faint golden shimmers. Following the scent, he suddenly kissed her lips, expressing his love in a way that was both gentle and wild, unique to monsters. As expected, Amanda's face turned red, and her heart was pounding. The golden light in her chest grew brighter and brighter, like a warm sun or a soft moon and stars. Dispelling the darkness in the room, the breeze blew gently, and the chirping of insects filled the air. In the distance, the mountains undulated, lying quietly in the wilderness as if asleep. It's bright again. Aurora was like a big dog, with his nose touching hers, snuggling closely. This was a common way for the Wolf clan to express intimacy. Amanda's eyes reflected the light. She reached out and stroked his fluffy and soft short hair. She wasn't scared at all anymore. Later, the monster gave her a precious wolf tooth necklace and told her that in their wolf clan, a monster only had one mate in a lifetime. Amanda stroked the wolf tooth around her neck and asked him, Aurora, how long is a lifetime that you mentioned? The deer monster greedily absorbed the love and power from her and replied, "Forever. Always."